If you have an enterprise, like a small shop, for instance, once you have a reliable, high-performing connectivity, you start to innovate on top of it. You open up connectivity to areas that wouldn't otherwise get it in the same way. It's also democratizing in a way.
Now you see why I'm so excited with the topic, right?
You're listening to IoT and IP Explained with Claudia Tapia, where experts discuss the latest in technology and intellectual property.
Today, I have the pleasure to interview Mathias Hellman, Vice President Strategy and Portfolio Management at Ericsson. Welcome, Mathias.
Thank you.
I'm truly honored, I have to say. You don't know that, but the first time I met you in Ericsson, you were much younger. I remember being in a meeting with over 30 people in the room, including senior leaders, and watching you raise your hand with such confidence, speaking up and bringing fresh ideas to the table. And when I got home after that trip, I told my partner, he's going to be management one day. He's incredibly sharp and truly embodies the values we uphold at Ericsson. And it has been incredibly inspiring to witness your journey and growth within the company. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time for this interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'm very flattered, obviously, and the pleasure is all mine. I think being able to share my thoughts and my views here with you today would be a good opportunity, I think.
That's really kind of you to say. I look forward to this podcast episode. Let's start maybe with the very basics.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast is about IoT and IP, and you're an expert in several fields, but one of them, standardization. Could you explain us, for those who are not so familiar with the standardization, what is the link between the Internet of Things and standardization?
Absolutely. So the key link is really that Internet of Things is a very heterogeneous set of use cases. I mean, if you think about it, it's everything from simple sensors, like a humidity sensor that you deploy in a building like this one to see if there's a leakage of a water pipeline, or a temperature sensor or something like that. Something we deploy at mass, very, very simple. It just once a day checks the temperature and reports back to some central maintenance hub. To the most extreme use cases that I think we see in the cellular world, where Ericsson has been developing ways to drive mining machineries remote from the surface. So instead of having operators going deep down into the mines and sitting there and drive these all day, they can operate from the surface in a much better environment and much safer environment. And those two use cases are both quote unquote IoT use cases, but obviously one is super demanding when you're driving super heavy machinery in the mines, and the other one is very simple, basically. So standardization creates a technology platform that we can provide and put into society that supports this wide range of use cases.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you mentioned is the standards, and I think they are so important for situations where we need to have compatibility and interoperability. I recall when I had my old iPhone and how frustrated I was. Charging cable was a different one from other phones, for a tablet, from the computer. And standards allows us to create these kind of general rules that all the companies follow in order to make these products compatible. But I also understand that it's business and the importance for sometimes creating products which makes you different from others. Knowing that, I was wondering, when is for us the best way to go standards, and when is the best way to go for proprietary solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a tricky one, and you deal with it on a macro level and also obviously on a micro level, where you take multiple decisions, whether it's something that should go into standardization and be contributed to the larger community, or if it's something that we indeed want to put in our products to make our products more unique and have a unique selling point to our customers and ultimately to the end users of our products. There are a couple of key things that we consider always, and one is, of course, whether the feature or what we've developed is important from an interoperability standpoint. I think we have lived in a world for a long time where we drive an ecosystem, and interoperability is important for us, and sometimes can be in contrast to having a unique offering or differentiated offering. So it's sometimes a bit painful to take something great that you have developed and put it into a standardized context. But in the long run, that has been incredibly important for the telecom sector, basically, and our ecosystem. The other key component is that standards provide scale. So whenever there is scale needed in order to really drive a market and drive components and technology forward, Ericsson is one of the major players in this field, but sometimes our market share and our presence is not enough to create the scale that is needed. It might be so that you need scale across the whole ecosystem, including also the device side and other parts of it beyond infrastructure. And in that sense, standardization is a great enabler to create that scale. So those two are key components, obviously, that we consider. But then we always also think about product differentiation. Do we have the right intellectual property position to really back this up? Is this going to be providing a long-term sustainable advantage for us? And those things that are pretty common when reviewing how to drive your products forward.
That's a great perspective on how these decisions are made in a company. Standardization drives the industry, but having a unique offering also seems crucial. Now, Ericsson is known for building network infrastructure. Why is the company so interested in 5G use cases?
Well, it's a great question, and indeed, we do only the network side of things. We don't do phones or IoT devices for that matter too. But I think if you build a product, it's critical that you think about your customer. And for us, the customer is the mobile operators, the CSPs. But the end user is not the CSPs. They are providing a connectivity service to someone. That could be the mining operator. It could be the simple sensor. But it's also you and me as consumers, right? When we use our phones and we drive our cars and we do all the connected use cases that we do. So I think it's fundamental to understand use case evolution in order to understand how we articulate the value of the technology piece we create, not only to our customers, but also how we help them to develop new use cases and new revenue streams for enterprises and consumers eventually. So I always feel that even though we don't sell the products as such, really understanding the use cases in depth and be part of driving that part of the ecosystem is critical in order to really build the best infrastructure products and deliver the best technology for that side of the ecosystem too.
I can imagine that developing standardized solutions for a wide range of use cases must be incredibly challenging.
Indeed, and I think standardization only goes so far, but there is also a lot of bilateral and multilateral partnerships that is facilitation before you actually can do standardization. And sometimes it's also the way that you develop technology that doesn't have to take the route through standardization, but could still be something that industry at large adopts in the end.
Mm-hmm. I find 5G a very interesting topic, and I'm thinking about all the use cases that 5G enables. And I was wondering whether you could share some of those with the audience.
Absolutely, and I think it could be a podcast of its own, because I think it's really, but we've only seen the beginning, actually. Even though 5G has been a symbol on our screens for some time, I think we still have a far way to go in terms of new use cases. And I think one of the key use cases for me that I really like a lot is the fixed wireless access use case, which is a way where we can deliver fiber-like connectivity to places that are underserved with fiber. So 5G has a part of its capability is really that you could have, let's say, a dedicated 5G device in your house that will connect to the cell tower and create a connection in between your house and the cell tower that will perform in a similar way as fiber. And this allows to deliver that type of connectivity to places where it's not economically feasible to provide fiber. There are multiple places where basically there are too few users to actually dig in the ground and put the fiber in. And this is a way to deploy that in a more under different economics, basically. And I think that is quite interesting because you open up connectivity to areas that wouldn't otherwise get it in the same way. It's also democratizing in a way. I think really having access to it is important. This is something we see a very strong demand for. It's one of the use cases, in addition to smartphones and everything else, that we see a huge growth in as well.
And it makes such a difference. I mean, I recall when they installed fiber in my area, and then suddenly internet was like,
yes, that's the key, right? Once it's there, then you start to adapt your behavior. Or if you have an enterprise, like a small shop, for instance, once you have a reliable, high-performing connectivity, you start to innovate on top of it. And sometimes it's not all the big innovations. Sometimes it's just in your shop, you want to have a small IPTV stream of something, or you want to have a camera so that you can surveil your whatever you do. If you have a summer house and you have a far way to go, but you still want to see, are the windows broken? Or, how does it look? Are everything okay? Having a good connectivity piece there so you can do that monitoring, that could be quite important.
I'm also thinking in this part of remote working and the possibility to find an amazing area, which might be not so populated.
Yeah.
And that could be a great way to still be able to work at your best.
Absolutely. And obviously, fixed wireless access could be one part of that because obviously, or however, though, it's connected to one fixed location. So I think in complement that, basically, I think we also see more and more laptops being 5G connected. And the reason for that is that people are working more remote, you work from different places. 5G is providing a connectivity that is really reliable, secure, it's high performing. It's also from an economics point of view, a great competitor to enterprise Wi-Fi. And I think what we also see now, Ericsson is a contributor to this, is seeing a way to manage 5G connectivity very transparently to the user so that you can just put on your laptop and start work, and you don't have to care about, is there a Wi-Fi? Am I at home? Am I still in Sweden, or have I gone to the US? It's all managed, secure, and high performing. And that's the way connectivity should be, I think.
Yes. And it's not only for those who are working. I think it has also an impact in gaming and on entertainment that we use. What 5G plays a difference.
For sure, I'm sure it's going to come kind of broadly, but enterprise is the key kind of first use case for that, of course, to carry that extra cost. So that's, I think, a very interesting evolution that we see with 5G. There are a couple of more. So now we talked about more like basic connectivity and so on. I think another use case that I think is maybe slightly more futuristic, but quite interesting is virtual reality. So there's a range of these headsets on the market right now, and I think it's still early days. What we have with regards to 5G and headsets and augmented reality or virtual reality is that we can provide a connectivity between your headset and the edge cloud that is so fast and so powerful that you can move the computation up to the edge instead of doing the computation in your glasses. So that leads to neater and smaller glasses because you can remove hardware from your face and put it into the cloud instead, and rely on that connectivity piece to be, basically to allow better form factors without sacrificing on performance, on really the key use of the glasses or the headpiece as such. So that's another way of showing the versatility about 5G, really how it can transform industries by its quite important and unique features.
Indeed. There are great examples of how 5G isn't just about faster speeds. It's about enabling entirely new ways of working, playing, and interacting with technology. Can you think about other use cases? I do know that it has an impact also in sustainability, education.
Yes.
It's really everywhere.
Yeah.
There are so many sectors profiting from 5G.
E-learning, for sure. I think it's also still emerging, and it's I think it's connected to affordable and reliable connectivity as such, where 5G is one part of it, but it's not necessarily 5G only. But you also talked about sustainability, and I think there's a trend also where manufacturing is leveraging 5G to make manufacturing more or basically more efficient. So efficiency obviously means less waste, higher productivity, lower energy use. So it's a clear sustainability piece to it, but it's a very clear economic proposition too. I mean, if you have a factory and you can connect it, and by that you can increase efficiency, you can have digital twins, you can have proactive maintenance, all these things that could revolutionize the way we look at advanced manufacturing in the world. So 5G in that sense is, could be kind of the enabler of that revolution. And while we in in previous use cases, we talked about maybe the importance of being able to move a lot of data up and down from the network to the device, with manufacturing is also about latency. So the response times, that it should be really, really quick. And that's another important feature of 5G, of course.
Now you see why I'm so excited with the topic, right? So many ways. Yeah. We have been talking about technological advancement, what we're going to see with 5G, how the economy and the society is going to benefit from it. But I think that this is only working because we have an IPR system that is built to foster innovation. And we often hear about the cycle of innovation. And I was wondering, could you share with the audience how we incorporate IPR in our strategy? How is this industry creating a successful 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and in the near future, 6G technologies?
And the IPR system, it's been central for Ericsson, but it's been central for the industry at large, I think, to really deliver this high performing technologies at a very broad scale. And I think there is no other technology that has been disseminated so well as the cellular technology. And I think standardization and IP system are key components to that, where you can find connectivity today in places where there is lack of proper sanitation or sometimes even electricity, but still you have 4G or 5G connectivity. So I think that's an amazing achievement from this. And the connection of this is that there is really, as you say, a cycle. And I think it's important to see it as a cycle. It's not linear. It's not a one-time thing. We've been doing this now for decades, and we have a very long-term perspective on this. It is something that requires a long-term view. But in essence, it starts with fairly massive R&D investments. So Ericsson, we invest billions of dollars and many billions of Swedish crowns in R&D every year. We've been doing so in a very sustained fashion. So year after year, we do invest at these levels. Our R&D budget typically goes up every year too. And we do that to really develop and bring some of our best R&D results to the standardized setting. So we contribute our findings, we contribute our proposed solutions, our technology into standardization. Some of that is obviously protected by IP, and patents in particular. By our contributions, we get a standard that is fulfilling the requirements of the industry, a high-performing technology platform that is made available to the public really at day one when it's set, basically. So it's a way of creating that market, creating that scale that we talked about really from day one. So that's happening. That's also then bringing standard compliant devices and standard compliant networks to this ecosystem very early on too. And for us, then the next step in that cycle is to have a licensing program and licensing ambition to this new technology, where we are licensing the technology that we have contributed to standardization, and we're getting then a fair return basically on the investments we've done and for the patented technology that we own. And this revenue stream we get from the licensing is the critical revenue stream to fund and incentivize our next investment that we do. And from a temporal point of view, or to get some sense of the need for being long-term here, there might be 10, 12 years, even longer, from when we start to do the fundamental research until you see the first devices in the market, and where we then start to recoup by doing our licensing. It's a long-term thing. It requires perseverance, but it also is fundamentally built on that you have IP as a way of transacting in the system as well.
Indeed. Wow, this has been great. I think everybody has got at least some understanding on why it's so important to engage in this topic of standardization and Internet of Things, and the value that intellectual property rights bring in this constellation. Before you leave, I would like to ask something a little bit more personal, which is whether you could share with the audience a lesson learned in your career.
I have many lessons learned because I made many mistakes.
That's a good thing. You learned a lot.
yeah, and I think obviously making mistakes is impossible to avoid, and I think it's more how you learn and how you correct and how you improve that really defines you in a way. If I should pick one, I think it's maybe kind of less from day-to-day IPR business and licensing, and maybe more how it is to work in our space. I think being clear is important, and that goes to colleagues like us, but also to people in the industry that we interact with. I think if you're clear and concise in what you in your views and what you think, that as opposed to being ambiguous and very tactical and so on, that is something that I think is a strong foundation for a relationship that lasts. It's a strong foundation for trust. And someone said quite recently, to be clear is to be kind. And I think there is something to that, obviously, if you do it in the right way. So that's one thing maybe to pass on to the audience. It sounds very easy. It's not that easy, actually. But if you invert it and say that, I should not be clear, I should be ambiguous, I should be tactical and so on, it's not always the best way to go.
It's very interesting because last podcast that I was talking to Carlos Munoz, and he was telling me the importance of simplifying messages.
Yeah.
And I hear now for you this need from clarity. What have you done differently to achieve being now more clear?
It's totally situation dependent, but I think your previous guest is spot on. We, as IP professionals, we are very good at processing massive amount of information. I think it just comes in the way that we work. We read every letter in the email. We really want to drill down and understand everything. But when we then communicate, we tend to also communicate everything because we think it's important to be complete, to be accurate, and not to bring all the details, basically. But most of the audiences that you speak to, they can maybe consume one or two main messages, and that's in a 60-minute presentation or lecture, whatever it is. And it's all about building those two messages, repeat them, and explaining them kind of over and over again. And I think that's important, that you need to really budget with the messages that you have. And that's a priority. And sometimes it's very painful because you have more that you really want to tell. I'm, very passionate about this. I have so many more things to say. But if I can give you everything, I'm just undermining your ability to take action on the two most important or three most important things.
Yes, and it's also difficult for the audience to, as you said, identify what is from everything what I need to focus.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's so and whether that is in a presentation mode, you have the golden rules of tell, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I tell you, and then I tell you what I told you, and you keep it to three. Then that's kind of our framework for clarity and repetition. But I think it's also in a conversation like the one we have now, just between two people, it sometimes just easier to just focus on one topic at a time and be very clear on that one and then move on.
That's true, because I think you and I are very passionate about this topic, and we'll go spend a whole day with a question and then another question. Yeah. But we want to make sure we don't overload the audience. I would like to thank you very much for your time and sharing with us. I'm quite sure the audience has enjoyed as much as I have, and hope to see you very soon.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
I would also like to thank the audience for joining us today. As always, your comments are more than welcome. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving a 5-star rating. This helps others discover this podcast and become part of this amazing community. You can find me in LinkedIn under Dr. Claudia Tapia. Connected, we go further.